Welcome to this new episode of Foresight. Today, we explore the importance of the financial system in attracting FDI. But before we start, we'd like to extend a special thanks to our strategic partner, Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for their continued support in these insightful discussions. Let's dig in. Join me in welcoming Sulaiman Harthi, CEO of Oman Arab Bank. Welcome to Foresight.
Thank you very much, Fatma, for inviting me to Foresight.
Okay, let's just dig in. First of all, let's have a look at the financial sector in Oman. Do you see that the financial structure and the financial systems in the country are attractive to FDI? Are they allowing more FDI to flow into the country?
Yes, confidently, I think I would say so. The financial sector in Oman is very well structured. Financial sector in Oman has sustained a lot of shocks and has developed over a period of time to be able to attract any type of FDIs that may come.
But do you think in certain scenarios where the investor is more risk taker, feel that the local financial system is too conservative for that investment to come into the country?
Well, we hear this a lot, that the local banks are more risk averse than all other countries in the world. But if you go anywhere in the world and try to take any facilities or financial loans or project financing, it's typically the same type of questions, because financial sector in any part of the world, they more or less deal on the same analysis, on the same evaluation of any proposals that they come. And specifically, I wanted to say that, all the banks in Oman, they look for opportunities, but these opportunities have to be bankable. What it means bankable is that it has to meet minimum risk standards that not only apply here in Oman, but it applies all over the world.
Do you think that is one of the reasons why we do not see a lot of Omani banks financing or investing in mega projects beyond the country?
Beyond the country have got other dynamics, because, for example, if you finance a project in other countries, you have to have sufficient currency of that country to be able to finance. However, also they have to have certain ratio requirements of financing cross-border. It's exactly the same. Only few Omani companies get financed outside the country. So mainly what is financed in the country by foreign banks are primarily AAA companies in Oman or government-related companies in Oman that gets financed from banks outside of Oman.
You mentioned the government, and thank you for mentioning that, because I want to ask you, from your point of view and from your experience as a banker, when it comes to the foreign investor, when they come to the country, how important is it to this investor to have government guarantees funding for their projects?
So governments all over the world do not specifically guarantee financing for foreign investors. So let's say if you go to any country in the West, if you go to the UK, you will not get the government to guarantee your financing, even if you're going to invest there. So what is FDI? FDI is foreign direct investment.
Correct.
So a foreigner has to bring funds for the project in Oman, not the other way around, that the government has to guarantee their requirement for financing.
But then sometimes they take the funding itself or the facilities from the local banks.
Yeah, so for example, let me tell you, for example, let's take Oman, Mall of Oman. All right, it's a foreign-owned business that came into Oman. And because it was a bankable proposition, It was funded by the construction. The construction was funded by Omani banks. We have several other companies that come in Oman. For example, Total Energy, for example, BP Petroleum, and so many other companies that come and have FDIs, and these were financed by local banks, but there were no government guarantees. Government does not guarantee such financing. When the proposal is bankable and is the banks see them as with proper structure, proper risk, they finance them, and banks actually are looking for such good projects to finance.
You mentioned two companies, foreign companies, who are investing in the country, and they're both in the energy sector. Most of the FDI in Oman is actually in one specific sector, which is energy, and more specifically in upstream. How do you think local financial system can help diversifying that portfolio to attract more capital-intensive investments to Oman beyond upstream?
So you mean like downstream and...
It can be downstream, it can be other sectors, like property development, construction.
Yeah, so construction, I mean, if you take all sectors, again, I reiterate the fact that if a project is bankable, whether it is upstream or downstream, or any sector, whether it is fisheries, manufacturing, or mining, the banks are very actually, banks are looking for such projects to finance. However, a project has to be viable, and it has to pass through a lot of risk tests, So you cannot expect banks to finance projects which are of very high risk, because after all, banks don't have money except their capital, and all the money is the depositors' money, and the banks are entrusted with this money. So we really have to be extra careful with each and every project that we finance, whether it is an oil sector or a fisheries sector. And banks cannot, you cannot do, let's say, a road show to finance fisheries projects, because at the end we are bankers, we are not fishers. We do not know there have to be people who understand that business,
industry,
who come up with the idea, who come up with the financial structure of the project they are willing to finance, and then the banks come in,
When you talk about the sectors themselves, some of the sectors actually bring a lot of capital. One of the reasons why upstream represent such a high percentage is the sector itself is capital intensive, but not all the investments are such.
Yeah.
So if Oman is, let's say, beyond the oil and gas era, is trying to diversify its portfolio of FDI, do you feel banks have something to help with that? Can they help with that?
Yeah, see, banks can help in analyzing the feasibility of these projects, So, for example, today I was talking to someone who says to me that if you, as a bank, you finance, let's say, just take it a simple thing, like a huge residential project, you need engineers who understand about residential projects, because when a proposal is presented to you as a bank, you look at it with a financial mind. You do not know the engineering part. So you have to have the engineering capabilities to be able to advise you whether, let's say, if they say that a road or a house costs a certain amount of money, this has to be somebody who understands the costs analysis of all the materials that are being put, whether they are overpriced or are below priced, or whether the timelines they're putting for completing the project are reasonable or not reasonable. So you know, it's not only the banks. You really need to have the other side.
Okay. You mentioned that you and banks would love to have more FDI. You welcome FDI.
Of course, yes.
I was reading a recent study, I think 1 or 2 years ago, and in that study it highlighted a negative relation actually between FDI and the lending of the banks. That study suggested that banks are less welcoming to FDI because the capital, when it comes from abroad, the project itself does not borrow from the local banks. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, you see, there are certain companies who come with their own banks. You know, they come and they want the entire project to be financed or funded by the banks abroad, and they just come here and do the work and finish and go. We always try because sometimes they are part of the transaction or the cycle that has to be done with the local bank. For example, they have to pay their salaries to the employees and they have to pay in Riyal Omani. We do not, in such projects, we do not necessarily finance, but there are other services that we provide to those companies.
But let's take the Omani banks. Do they do the same practice when an Omani investor, whether it's a government investment or a private investment going abroad, and they're trying to set up a new project in one of the countries, are you being approached to come?
Sometimes, yes, because sometimes you have a company that the group or the head office is here, and they borrow from a head office here to do a project in other countries. But I remember recently there is a company that we were discussing with them. They have a project in Kuwait, for example, and they took financing from the head office here to fund their project in Kuwait. However, sometimes you find that financing from other countries is cheaper than getting finance from here, because if you finance them from here, you either finance them in US dollar or in Riyal Omani, and then they go there, they have to convert the money in either the local currency. So it becomes a little bit more expensive for them than directly borrowing from that country, because the cash flows. So if they go to Kuwait, they get paid in Kuwaiti dinars. They cannot borrow in Omani Riyal and then convert in Kuwaiti dinar, and then they are converted Kuwaiti dinar into Riyal Omani to pay us, So these are the dynamics that they have.
Is this fact makes financing projects abroad more attractive or less attractive to you as banks?
No, it depends, really. There are certain projects that are attractive to us, and there are certain projects that you find them not really attractive. It depends on many things. It depends on, so as I said, this company borrowed from their head office here, so they could pay us directly from here. But you find some projects that is very difficult for them because of the internal financial structure. So sometimes it's difficult for them to or it's more costly for them to borrow from us, or sometimes to borrow from abroad.
Do you feel that the current structure you said in the beginning that the financial system is very well structured in Oman, but my question will be, what more can be added to the financial sector to be, first of all, more of an investment banking than just the traditional conventional banking, more risk-taking, and also the spread itself of Omani banks financing projects abroad? How can the local banks reach that international aspect?
So I want to ask first, to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So when you say about to take more risk, what do you mean by that? Yani, you
Let's
mean
say
that
venture capital and investing in new technology, even the utilization of Bitcoin itself in the fintech industry. The banks, as we see it today, are still in the conventional way of financing a project after studying it with a certain limitation on when it comes to the risk, for example, percentage-wise. Sometimes in also the sector itself. Some sectors are more appealing to banks to finance against other sectors.
Yeah, see, it goes back to the viability of a project. And no bank in the world, whether it is here in Oman or in Japan or in US or wherever, will finance a project that is not viable. So risk taking is, banks do not avoid risk, they manage risk. So they study a project very, very well, and all the banks in the world, because nobody wants to put money knowing that the money will not come back. Because after all, it's not your money, it's the depositor's money. If you do this, then you are not a banker. You will lose them. You will close in a very short period of time. And for your information, there is a ratio called the non-performing rate of each bank, and the banks are rated. They are managing their business is rated, based on the ratio of non-performing loans that they rate. For your information, out of 10 new small and medium enterprises you finance, 2 or 3 will go bad.
Okay.
The Omani ratio is about 35%, because you see it yourself sometimes when you go to the shopping malls. You see a shop opened, and you go back there after 2 or 3 months, this shop is closed.
Correct.
So imagine if you are a bank and you have given money to this, then you have to run after them, because they closed means they lost money.
True.
So you have to either sell their houses, sell their cars, which is something that nobody wants to do, really, or you go to court, or you go. So these are the things that we try to avoid by studying the case well in advance and analyzing it properly, making sure that when you give money, money will come back. You mentioned about investment banking. So most of the banks in Oman, except us, because we have a sister company that has an investment banking license. Most of the banks in Oman have investment banking license, and they do investment banking. Investment banking can be in many different ways, I think when I was in Bank Muscat announced a huge investment in startups, whether startups in Oman or startups abroad. So again, even in yourself, if you have 10,000 riyals and you have to invest them, you will definitely study which investment you will put your money, and make sure that your money will come back with profit. There is nobody who will put their money in, no matter what, in any project, if they know that the money is not going to come back.
But if all banks practicing investment banking, what do you think is the logic of having a new investment bank?
Maybe they see things that they can add in the market. So
such as
probably
you have
it's a good
experience
thing.
of 3 decades, or at least in the banking sector. I'm sure you at least have an idea what can a bank specialized only in investment
See,
banking.
investment banking, under investment banking, you have got things like, for example, advisory. So you might have a company that is facing financial troubles, and this company goes to an investment banker to advise them how to restructure their balance sheet, how to relook at their business model, how to refine where they can save money and increase their revenues. So investment banks do that. Investment banking is not just looking at a new project and putting money here, putting money. No, there's a lot of things under the investment banking license. So. And also because of COVID-19, the slowdown in economy, the changes in the geopolitical problems. So some companies will need investment bankers to advise them on what course of action they need to take in the coming future.
Okay, one last question, and it has to do with different changes in geopolitics in the region especially. Do you find it impactful on the financial sectors and its ability to invest in certain countries or to have financial dealings with certain parties in the region?
Some banks they have got a different way of looking at these such risks. I'll give you an example of our bank, because we are basically a Jordanian bank. We tend to take issues of compliance very, very strictly, very, very strict. So whenever there are some troubled countries, whether there is embargo or not, we tend not to do those businesses, because we are very, very careful, conservative. We accept not to make more money by taking those kind of transactions than taking them and probably facing some consequences in the future.
And like sanctions, for example?
Yeah, because we are prone to such things. Being a bank with the name of what we have, we're prone to have those. So we tend to take extra care on this.
Thank you very much, Sulaiman, for your time and this insightful discussion.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
We would also like to thank our viewers and our strategic partner, Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for their support. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channels and follow for all the updates. And remember, tomorrow's opportunities are shaped today. This is Fatma Al-Aremi and Studio Makan team. Thank you and see you next time.